Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, an already healthy monsoon season now includes nearly 3 inches of rain thanks to Tropical Storm Lorena. Also tonight, medical marijuana for children. A local doctor looks at both sides of the issue. And we'll hear about water management challenges facing Arizona's cotton industry. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Recent rains in the valley and around the state have reinforced what's turned out to be a pretty good summer rainy season. Here to tell us what's going on is ASU climatologist and President's Professor Randy Cerveny. Good to have you here.
Hey, thanks.
What is going on out there? There's some crazy stuff here the past few days.
Well, what we've got, it's the typical monsoon winds, circulation, but it's on steroids because it was able to pick up all that moisture from the dying tropical storm that was down off the coast of Mexico. As all that moisture was pumped up the Gulf of California, it basically really just dumped right onto Arizona.
Is that unusual for Arizona? Is that unusual for this time of year?
Actually, this is the perfect time that we have these kind of things because the monsoon never really sharply ends. It slowly dwindles away, and as it dwindles away, there's a tendency for these dying tropical storms that are off Mexico to work their way up into near Arizona. We never get a tropical storm up here, but what happens is we get the moisture and we can have these kind of rains in September and October.
So the storm kind of sees a vacuum, moves up because the monsoon's easing off a little bit.
Right. Actually, the reason that it comes up into Arizona is it's kind of like a giant pump that when we have high pressure over in the Great Plains,
yes,
it circulates around in a clockwise manner. So that airflow comes over Mexico, pushes that moisture right up into Arizona. So when you have really hot, dry conditions like they've had in the Great Plains this year, that kind of pumps the moisture right up into Arizona.
Well, let's talk about that because it seems to me that this has been an above average monsoon. Has it been above average?
Yeah, it is slightly above average right now. We are, in terms of the Phoenix metropolitan area, we have more rain than what we've had for several past monsoon seasons.
And that's because?
It's because primarily we've had a moisture source. We've had this flow of moisture. The typical monsoon, we get this moisture coming up from the Gulf of California and from the Pacific Ocean. But this year it's been very consistent. It's day after day of this pumping action.
Is that because that high you were talking about is parked a little bit east of us?
Yeah, and it just basically is set over Texas and baked Texas all this summer.
So, and they're having problems there with drought. They're having problems there with not enough rainfall. So when that's parked over us, they get their rainfall?
Yeah, and our monsoon moisture usually will arc up along the Colorado River and then go up into Utah. This year it hasn't really
So that's interesting. So if we have a good monsoon, they're hurting there in the plains. If we have a not so good monsoon, they're getting a lot of rain in the plains.
That's right. People don't realize that, but when you get one weather occurring in one kind of part of the country, it usually means the exact opposite in another part of the country.
Was there any way back in April, May to forecast that we would have an average to above average monsoon? Any way at all?
I wish I could say that there was, but no. The monsoon is such an odd phenomenon, and we've only been studying it for the last 10, 15 years, that we really don't yet have a good feeling for what causes it well in advance of when it actually starts.
Okay, so now we've got the monsoon, and it's slowly ending, and it seems to me, again, we talked about this before the show, it seems like in September, maybe not so many storms, but the storms we get can be real lulus. I mean, is that accurate?
And that is accurate. The reason, again, has to do with these tropical storms. That even though we don't get them coming up all the way into Arizona, the moisture, when they're dying down by Mexico, does get pumped up into Arizona. And so in September and October, we will not have as many storms as the monsoon time, but when they do, they really dump a lot of water.
Okay, it's also my impression that once the monsoon ends, and I guess statistically you guys have it at the end of September, but usually mid to late September, we go through an extended dry period similar to what we see maybe in the spring before we get to, not the temperatures aren't the same, but the dryness level seems to be the same. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we'll lose the moisture, and that's in the atmosphere because our storms switch from being powered by moisture in the air to being powered by things like cold fronts coming in from California. So we'll lose that moisture, and that means that we'll start to have really nice, cool, crisp mornings, and we'll get away from that monsoonal humidity that we're all used to in the summertime.
But it's not quite as dry for quite as long as we see in the spring?
Right.
Okay, so that's when it really bakes. And
right, yeah, because that's part of what causes the monsoon in the first place, is that baking that we get in the spring.
And we talked about that when you were here before the monsoon started. Okay, so on we go to winter. We got a La Nina, we got an El Nino. Can we figure out what's going to happen this winter?
Well, right now, what they are basically saying is that we're going to be tending towards drier conditions here in the Southwest, that most of the storms that we're going to have, and it's a fairly typical situation, are going to get shuttled up towards the northwest part of the United States, up into Oregon and Washington. And we'll get a few of those, but nowhere like the El Nino kind of seasons that we've seen occasionally in years past.
So tipping toward La Nina, if you had to go on.
It's going to be tipping towards a drier season.
Everything we've talked about, from an above-average monsoon to the plains to September to whatever, global warming and climate change, any factor whatsoever?
Well, one of the things that we have figured out is that the big high-pressure systems, like we've seen setting over Texas and the southern part of the country, particularly over the last few weeks, those are going to become more prevalent. But as they set there, they also tend to pull moisture up and circle it around them. So that, interestingly, one of the things that we found with global warming is that for the world as a whole, it should become a wetter place. We're still going to have droughts, but there's going to actually be more chances for getting big flooding events under a global warming world than under a non-global warming world.
And from an Arizona perspective, if a global warming world means that high-pressure system moves a little east, parks over Texas, and God bless them, they don't get anything going there. They got their own concerns. We wind up getting good summer rains.
Yeah, because the critical thing to us is being able to force that air from Mexico up into Arizona. And when you have something over in Texas that can circle that air up into Mexico, into us, that's what you need to have.
And real quickly, we're talking a lot about the monsoon and the importance of the monsoon. Pales in comparison to the winter rainy season and the snowcap.
Yeah, for things like the Colorado River and for the watersheds in the Salt and the Verde, it's the wintertime snows that are the critical thing, because you want to have that water slowly get into the reservoirs as opposed to just rush in and then rush out.
All right, Randy, good stuff. Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure.
We want to hear from you. Submit your questions, comments, and concerns via email at arizonahorizon@asu.edu.
Last week on Arizona Horizon, a state lawmaker and a medical marijuana advocate debated the issue of using medical marijuana to treat children. Tonight we get a local doctor's perspective. Richard Strand, a Phoenix physician, joins us now to talk about the efficacy and the wisdom of treating children with medical marijuana. Doctor, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this deals with a 5-year-old boy in Mesa. He's got cortical dysplasia, and it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't. It just sounds like terrible seizures. He's got some autism as well. They've tried to use drug after drug, cocktails this, cocktails that. Nothing seems to be working. He's been approved for medical marijuana. Does it concern you as a doctor that a 5-year-old will be given medical marijuana?
I think the answer to that has to be taken in the context of his whole medical treatment. This isn't what I would consider as his first treatment. He should see the pediatrician, the neurologist, have the full workup, try the the drugs for the treatment of seizures to see if they work. But unfortunately, in about 40% of children with seizures, they're not effective treatment. Plus, they have some pretty significant side effects. This patient, as well as several others that have been covered recently on CNN, on the Weed show about a month ago with Sanjay Gupta.
Yes.
There's quite a few kids out there now that are being treated. There's over 40 in Colorado, so they're probably in the hundreds now, and the treatments are showing to be effective. They're not the front-line treatment, but for people that are at the end of the rope, that have tried all effective medical treatments without good results, I think it's good that they have that alternative.
And we hear that medical marijuana is effective against nausea, pain, seizures. Some are even saying dementia, early onset dementia, or at least the symptoms of. Is that accurate? Is that what you're seeing and hearing out there?
I think that for the general physician community, the feeling is that for some people, in some conditions, medical marijuana really is the best thing to treat them. The problem with medical marijuana in the United States is it's a Schedule I drug. The DEA of the Department of Justice has declared this as a substance with no medical use and highly dangerous. Marijuana is neither of those two. It does not belong on Schedule I, but being it's on Schedule I, that means effective research in the United States is completely stymied.
So basically, because we have critics who say the FDA hasn't approved, the American Academy of Pediatrics are suggesting don't give medical marijuana to children. There are other groups and other studies suggesting the younger the child that gets the medical marijuana, the more the chance or the risk of problems later in life, especially psychiatric problems, these sorts of things, addiction problems. How much weight does that carry?
Well, I think the thing is, again, you have to look at the context of an individual patient. And I'm not speaking to our case here in Arizona, but just in general.
Yes.
If somebody is having 300 seizures a week and they're not receiving any benefit from conventional treatment and they've seen experts in the field, it makes sense to me to try. And if something works, and it seems in this case medical marijuana is working, it's well worth any risk.
But without the research, and we had Representative John Kavanaugh, who's been very much against medical marijuana in general and in particular to children. We had him on last week, and we got quite a response from his appearance. He says no one really knows without the research if it does work, and he says you can't flip a coin on something like this and guess. Here's what the Representative Kavanaugh had to say.
The United States has the safest prescription and non-prescription drug program in the world, because we don't allow snake oil to be peddled. Before a drug can be given to the public, studies have to be shown that convinces the FDA, research doctors, statisticians, pharmacologists, that it's safe and it's effective. Marijuana has not passed the hurdle for any condition whatsoever.
Do we know enough of how marijuana affects small children?
I think the answer to that question is no. We need research. But I will point out that in the United States, it's very, very difficult to perform research such as Representative Kavanaugh is discussing, because NIDA, which is a branch of the NIH, will not fund or approve any research that is designed to show the effectiveness of medical marijuana. They will only fund programs to show the harm. Therefore, a study that's been approved for Dr. Sue Sisley at the University of Arizona, approved by the FDA, and the legislature of Arizona changed the law so they can have research done on Arizona college campuses. She cannot get approval from NIDA to do this study. The FDA says yes, this is exactly the kind of study that we need. This case doesn't involve children, but it does involve post-traumatic stress disorder. We've got 20 veterans a day committing suicide, and we can't get an approval for a study for something that might help them.
Why can't we get it? I mean, the National Institutes of Health, I mean, we're talking groups that are there to help us in terms of health matters, and this is something that might help. Come on now, what's going on here?
What's going on is politics, number one, strong emotions, a lot of lack of scientific knowledge. Some of these people and what they say, they might as well be members of the Flat Earth Society. And I think for some people that aren't really involved with the subject, if they hear falsehoods enough time, they're going to believe it. But medical marijuana has been really a whipping boy almost since the prohibition of alcohol back in the 30s. There's a long history of people with vested interests that are not interested in medical marijuana or research being done upon it.
And you're saying the research isn't even done to, I mean, some of this research might prove it is harmful. It is something that shouldn't be given to kids or shouldn't be given to adults who have addictive You don't even know that. You can't even prove that it's harmful.
That's right. I mean, I think that the answer, for good science, you have to be able to live with the result. You're not going to presuppose the result in the beginning. If the result shows harm, good, you learned. If it shows benefit, good. Let's look at it some more. But that research is not going on in the United States. Fortunately, countries like Israel, Canada, Spain are doing research, so we are getting research, but just not here.
I've heard a criticism that Big Pharma is against medical marijuana because it can't be patented and they can't find a way to make money off of it, and it might take money from their products. Is that a valid criticism, you think?
I think so. Big Pharma, obviously this would be competing against some of their other medications that they do have patents upon. So it makes sense to me that why am I going to support a competitor? And I think that also is true for the whole anti-drug establishment. The DEA itself, NIDA, private prisons, police guard unions, politicians that get elected on this. I mean, there's a whole big complex of people that would not benefit by having medical marijuana used more or researched or legal.
So last question. It sounds like from research we've got at least 40 medical marijuana patients in Arizona that are under the age of 18. As a doctor, does that concern you?
It would depend, again, on the individual case. You really can't say more than that. But I will say that your point that it does seem that people under the age of 16 or 18, before the brain is fully developed, do have some increased risks of future adverse developments psychologically and so forth. But those people would normally be people we talk about in the recreational use category. Surely teens should not be using marijuana. But if they have a medical condition that hasn't been effectively treated by conventional treatments, yes.
Doctor, it's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Researchers at Arizona State University and the University of Arizona are studying the water management challenges facing the state's cotton farmers. For more on the study, we welcome Hallie Aiken, a professor at ASU's Global Institute of Sustainability. Good to have you here. I know it says agriculture in general, but it seems like it's cotton focused here. What is the state of the cotton industry in Arizona, especially when it comes to water management?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the last decade has been fairly dynamic for the sector in general. We've seen an economic recession here in Central Arizona. Central Arizona is one of the prime cotton-producing areas in the state, and the state is actually a really apt region for producing cotton. And the economic recession has actually provided some opportunities and coincided with relatively high commodity prices. So this has allowed farmers who might have gone out of business when housing prices were up and land demand was high have actually stayed in business and actually have leased land back from developers.
It's interesting that the urban encroachment, land prices, we've all seen the cotton fields plowed under and the condos and the houses put up. How much of a factor as far as the industry is concerned?
Well, I think that has had a major role since the 1980s. And one of the things that we're really interested in is what have been the expectations about the ag sector and how much of that has really played out. And we have seen definitely a decline in area farmed around Maricopa County and Pinal County. But recently, the other issues have come up in terms of commodity prices really being something that has been favorable for farmers, and the fact that development has slowed, and there's a change in the way we're thinking about urban growth and urban expansion here.
There's a perception that cotton uses a lot of water. Is that true?
Well, it depends on relative to what. And yes, cotton is a water consumptive crop compared to some other alternatives. But also we have to think about the conditions in which cotton is grown here. And it's not only a crop that can survive in relatively salinated soils and with water quality that's also fairly high in mineral content and salts, which vegetables, for example, may not do as well. So thinking about why cotton here, whether it's apt for a desert, it actually does really well in the desert. Farmers don't want to be farming where there's a lot of rain.
Well, I found that very interesting as far as the study is concerned, in that direct rainfall, you don't get enough direct rainfall. That's not that big of a worry, according to the study that I read here. But boy, the Colorado River, Colorado Basin, that's where it is a big factor.
Exactly. Part of our study has been looking at what really are the things that worry farmers in terms of the viability of their production. And one, we often think that agriculture is very sensitive to drought, for example, local drought conditions. And while we've had pretty severe drought conditions in the state over the last decade, farmers locally, these irrigated producers, haven't really been as affected by lack of rainfall here. They are affected, however, by flows in the Colorado River because a lot of their water comes from the Central Arizona product.
So with all this information at hand here, what are you finding out here? How can water be better utilized for the cotton industry? What are the farmers' concerns, and how can they be addressed?
Well, one of the things that we're focusing on is the role of agriculture since the 1980s in water management for the state. That agriculture has actually played a key role in kind of storing groundwater for future urban growth, in that there's been some incentives put in place so that the ag sector actually doesn't use the groundwater to which it has rights and instead uses surface water flows to kind of keep that groundwater from being overexploited and being available for urban growth.
Interesting. And this is groundwater that exists primarily because of the cotton fields, or they help?
No, the aquifer has always been there, but it is true that, and this is something that we often don't recognize, that agriculture in using water is actually replenishing. Some of that water is going back into the groundwater.
Yeah.
So if that water is transferred to the urban sector and we get housing development, the use of that water is going to change, and it isn't necessarily going to have that same function in terms of returning to groundwater or helping replenish some of that aquifer.
Back to the study and back to talking to farmers. What are they saying? What are their major concerns?
One of the things that has emerged is that they are definitely, while they're not concerned necessarily about local drought, they are concerned about the viability and accessibility of water in the future, and that primarily coming from the Colorado River, whether projections about declining flows are going to affect their availability and the cost of that water. And that also has to do with electricity prices, because not only does it is the large part of cap water costs having to do with electricity prices for pumping that water into the Central Arizona, but also groundwater. If they turn back to use groundwater, that cost is also dependent on our hydrological resources.
Does your research show that policymakers, urban planners, along with the farmers, all have something at stake here? Are you hearing everyone a little simpatico, or are they all kind of going off in different directions?
Well, I think what we are hearing is that this may be a really opportunity for the region as a whole to kind of think about the future differently. We've tended to think of these sectors as kind of non-compatible, competitive, either urban or you're rural, urban or ag. But there may be actual synergies that we can be thinking of in terms of the different ways that agriculture can play in the future as Phoenix decides what kind of urban footprint we're really thinking about.
And I was going to say, cotton is important to the state's footprint, is it not? I mean, that's one of the C's, the big C's.
It's incredibly important. It provides a really significant economic contribution to the state, but it's also, I think, in terms of identity, and we don't really think about that, but this is kind of the history and the culture and the identity here.
Pima cotton.
Pima cotton, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the 5 C's that were taught.
Yeah, that's very good.
So,
hey, interesting stuff. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, the regional director for Medicare and Medicaid tells us what to expect from the healthcare marketplace, and we'll look at a collaborative workplace for high-tech startups. That's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.